UBC, inspiring Uganda.
The Journey program on UBC TV.
Hello viewers, I am Victoria Bagejisa Sectoreko. I am the former Minister of Ministry of Agriculture, Animal Industry and Fisheries. I'm also the chairperson of the Uganda Agribusiness Alliance. I am the daughter of Mr. Samuel Bagejisa and Mary Bagejisa, my mother. They were based in Obsede. They were both farmers, hence my being a farmer's daughter. But this farmer's daughter was very lucky. She actually went to the best schools in the region because I went to Walkobe State School. I went to Uganda Girls Junior Secondary School, from where I was catapulted to Gayaza High School. During all this time, whatever school I went to, there was actually some agriculture being taught, hence my interest in agriculture and agribusiness. As we talk now, I am retired from most of the things people used to know me by. Things like politics, like I said, I'm the former Minister of Agriculture. But at that time, how many people would like to know exactly how did I become a minister well before I turned 40. You see, because of being a farmer's daughter and consistently being in agriculture, upon my graduation, I practically walked from Makerere University into Uganda Government Bank. I served there as an agriculture development banker for a cool 13 years. Fortunately, when you stay in a place long enough, you get to know the ropes. So once you know the ropes, you can multitask. And in any case, being a woman, I always multitask. Because at that time, when I was in the bank, I got married, and I started meandering a bit into politics. It was no surprise, therefore, that in 1986, when NRM government came to power, I chose to become part of it. I loved what I do because, once again, as I said, I'm a farmer's daughter. I was working in the bank as an agriculture development officer. Then when I became minister, I was deputy minister for Ministry of Agriculture. So very little was strange to me. And the most important thing, which now looking back helped me a lot, is that when I was a banker, I used to traverse the country. So when I became Deputy Minister of Agriculture, for 2 years I was called it Minister of State. My job was to understand the ministry, understudy the senior minister, Mr. Robert Chitariko. So 2 years later, when I became full cabinet minister, honestly, I was ready. When you become a minister, in a ministry where you have not been working, that means you are becoming the leader. And as the leader, your job is to really understand the ministry, think for the ministry, and join the planning for the ministry. This is where I normally tell people that part of the reason being Minister of Agriculture was easy for me is that really, ever since I was young, I sleep, I dream, I think nothing else but agriculture. So being in that ministry, I was home. And being in that ministry with people of same thinking, honestly made it very easy for me. But I think also, having studied what most of them studied at university, I knew how difficult it was, and I knew how, if we applied it all, Uganda could have joined the middle income even a long time ago. So when I was minister, what do I think were my achievements? Like I said, I was in school with some of the officers I was working with. Some had been there before and others had been there after. So I knew the courses and I knew what they were expected to do in the field. And I could tell that given the education they had had, it was not enough for them to be our experts. So I remember we came up with a plan to practically take the whole ministry back to school. So we got a large grant which sent, like I've said, everybody who wanted to go back to school went back to school. That is why you find so many people now retiring, because that is some time back, with the masters and doctorates, basically because they had to fit the Ministry of Agriculture, which was the backbone of the economy. And at that time, my former deputy minister, late Honorable Sabit, came up with the idea of organizing agriculture competitions. Of course, we called in the PS and asked him if we could find money to do agriculture competitions. Of course, my PS then, I would not name him, was a lot older than me, looked at me and said, "Madam, in government, we don't do anything which we have not budgeted for." I'm like, "You wait, this woman will do it." So in spite of what he said, we went ahead, organized the agriculture competitions, and for the next 5 years, year after year, we actually had, that was always the highlight of the year. We always celebrated the agriculture competition, we celebrated the winners, and I was actually pleasantly surprised in that, as I said, there was no money in the budget, so we had to really wing it. But when it came to looking for prizes, I really had all sorts of surprises. When the American ambassador calls me and says, "We are going to give you 10 scholarships. 10 of your best farmers will be traveling to the United States, everything paid for 6 weeks." You know, I thought I was dreaming. Then the British followed suit, then the Danish, then Egypt also gave us scholarships, then Zimbabwe, Kenya, and of course Uganda itself. But none of that money came from the coffers of government. Most of these were gifts given by people who loved agriculture. So I remember my parting year, which was 1994, because that is the last competition I presided over. We had more than 200 people getting prizes ranging from a whole tractor. In fact, I'll never forget one of the winners who got a tractor, and we gave him his card. Calls me like 2-3 days later and says, "Madam, I just want to confirm, you mean this tractor is mine for free and that's it?" I'm like, "Yes, you won. Thank you for your contribution." That is Uganda saying thank you. So when I looked back afterwards, what was I seeing? I was very happy with the very educated team, which I left behind. And I was also very happy with the happy farming public, which I left behind. So where did I go when I left? Okay, first of all, why did I leave? Because really being Minister of Agriculture for me was such a joy. I enjoyed every single day. But the Baganda say, "Ebirungi birekwa." 9 years, just over 9 years into the job, I'm like, I think I'm ready for a change. So I left. I had been headhunted by the United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization to go and become one of their directors. So that is when I left and joined the Food and Agriculture Organization. I was based in Zimbabwe for 9 years. Then I moved on to Ethiopia, Djibouti, and ECA, Economic Community for Africa. So I was covering the whole of Africa on behalf of the Food and Agriculture Organization. 3 years later, I was moved to China, Mongolia, and North Korea. I don't know why people want to revise what I did. I was not in South Korea. I was in North Korea. And once again, it was a super joy serving in China, going to Mongolia. Mongolia is so clean. The Mongols are so loving. I love their meat. I love their culture. Because for them, a visitor is a visitor. And I had fun. And North Korea, I'm just lucky to be one of the privileged few people in the whole world who have ever worked in North Korea. And honestly, it is not as bad as people make it out, but that's there. So when you work for the UN, the one thing they tell you the day they hire you is that come this date, goodbye. There's no negotiation. So time came, 17 years later, I had to retire. And honestly, I was looking forward to that. After retirement, about 5 years before retirement, I had already started preparing for my retirement. Because one of the things I wanted to do was set up private community libraries. So I had already started collecting books. And so when I came back here, so that when I come back here, I can set up maybe about 10 libraries. For who? For me, I don't care. When I set up a library is a public place. Even if I have 1 or 2 readers a day, that's good enough for me. Because like the saying goes, you can take a horse to water, but you can't force it. Yeah, I actually did set up those libraries, and some of them are still working, some are not working, but I've not yet given up. Because after all, I'm a guy as a girl, and we never give up. So what else did I prepare to do? You know, when I went to Zimbabwe, where I moved after my political job, my first session was Zimbabwe, I found that they have colleges which teach public speaking, they teach counseling. At whatever level you go in there, that is normally a postgraduate course. So I joined the school and actually learned public speaking. Honestly, after about 3 classes, I felt like going back all over the world, collecting all the stupid speeches I had made, tear them and do it all over again. So one of the things I decided to do when I retire was come back here, set up a school to teach public speaking. I set it up and I still teach public speaking. But then in the process of public speaking, because as you know, when somebody will tell you so-and-so is very talkative, most people will have at least one topic which they are very conversant with. For me, it is of course agriculture. So when I would organize this, when I would teach public speaking, all the examples I give would be from agriculture, agribusiness. Then when I would organize talks so that these people who we have taught public speaking can practice, most of the best attended talks were about agribusiness. So somehow the Uganda Agribusiness Alliance evolved. It honestly grew organically. I did not like sit somewhere and say, oh yeah, when I go back to, no. We were teaching public speaking, we were talking about agribusiness, then Uganda Agribusiness Alliance evolved. Fortunately, you know, if it is time for something to happen, it will definitely happen. Because coincidentally, I meet other people like Steve Hodges from the United States, the Edward Katende, who was from here, but they all were of the same mind. And that for me was very important because when we started, we had no money, but none of the 3 of us was in it for the money. So in 2014, because I retired in 2011, 2014, we started Uganda Agribusiness Alliance. So what does Uganda Agribusiness Alliance do? We actually look at the policies in agribusiness, understand them, analyze them, see if there is a missing gap, and then we talk to the private sector, we talk to government, and see if there is a policy, but it has not been disseminated. We as the UAA, organize those talks I was talking about in order to disseminate the policy. If it is not there, like when we started, we were very concerned about Uganda, an agriculture country, not having an agriculture financing policy. So when we went to MAIF, Means of Agriculture, we were told, honestly, Victoria, as you can see, that goes to finance. When we went to finance, the Means of Finance is like, Victoria, that is agriculture. So we are like, this is a gap. You can't be an agriculture country without a clear agriculture finance policy. So a lot of work was done. Most of those, you hear the financing of agriculture, whatever, to a certain extent, a result of the noise we were making. The second thing we do as Uganda Agribusiness Alliance is advocate for agribusiness. But let me first of all define what is agribusiness. For us at Uganda Agribusiness Alliance, we look at anything to do with farming or farming-related commerce. Farming-related commerce, that is agribusiness. So if you are doing anything which at the end of the day will result in either food, fiber, fuel, or forest. I'll repeat, forest, fiber, food, or fuel. That is agribusiness. And it is large because if, for example, you are making caterpillars, those huge ones, which are supposed to move the trees after we have cut down the forest, you are in agribusiness. If you are making tractors, or if, for example, you are in the village and your job, you are the expert loader of cattle. Your job, whenever I'm selling my cattle, you come in at 3 a.m., you load 100 cattle, I pay you your money that night, and you go. You are part of agribusiness. And to me, it is very important that Ugandans understand this. Because quite often, when some people are busy castigating young people that they don't work, it depends how you define work. Because honestly, if this young man has spent the whole night either loading matoke in Kabohe or loading cattle in Sembabule, you wake up at 6 o'clock, or 7 o'clock or 8 o'clock, you go and dig maybe for 2 hours, you come back, 2 hours. He has been working for maybe, the young man worked for 3 hours or 6 hours loading cattle. For you have worked for 3 hours in your garden. But because you have seen him seated on the veranda, you are like, those young men don't work. They spend their time betting. What money do they use to bet? So sometimes I feel like telling people, maybe if you minded your own business, second, if you, instead of complaining about these youths, if you put more energy into your work, Uganda would be better off. Anyway, why am I talking about the youth? Because if you are advocating for agriculture and agribusiness, the largest consumer society in Uganda are the youth. So if we are going to feed them, we have got to know where they are, what they are doing, and what they want. Because in agribusiness, whatever we do, which will be affected by two things, either the environmental changes or the demand and supply of the consumer. So for the environment, it's a different thing, we handle it differently. But for the consumer, this youth, because if your population is 70% or 80% youth, those are your consumers. So the demand and supply, their eating habits, because like one of the best things that ever happened to agriculture is when the youths started making Rolex. Because there were no old women making Rolex. That was a youth thing, and the youth, the makers were youth, and the consumers were youth. Every old and young woman who was looking after chicken was the happiest because there was a market for eggs. The one thing which makes Uganda Agribusiness Alliance happy is that these days nearly every media house talks about agriculture or agribusiness. Secondly, I love the fact that Ugandans have demystified agribusiness, that now people are proud to be farmers. Because previously somebody would say, I'm just a farmer. Now, one, people are proud to be farmers. Two, I now know that nearly every Ugandan has a back kitchen garden. And along those lines, let me share this with Ugandans. I've got a friend who was the head of the Kenya flowers exporters. And one time, Kenya was having issues with Britain because they were saying that they fly the flowers, so they are causing too much carbon, and so they should not export their flowers to Britain, especially if Waitrose, the company which belongs to the King of England now, is buying. And the Kenyans said no. Under normal circumstances, we are allowed a certain amount of carbon, but we have not even used 0.0% of our carbon. So you cannot blame us for that. If anything, we should be labeled green. Somehow the king had to heard about this argument, and he decided that he was going to meet the flower exporters himself. So he invited them to dinner. But the part you should be interested in is when they arrived, just like I do at my home, the king took them for a visit, an inspection of his kitchen garden. He showed them, you see those carrots, that's what you are having for dinner, the potatoes, the green onions, everything has been harvested from my garden. So, to you, my fellow Ugandan, if the King of England, the king you know, that the son of the queen, can have a kitchen garden and can actually work in the kitchen garden, what about you and I? Anyway, having said that, as far as Uganda Agribusiness Alliance is concerned, we are very happy that we now have all sorts of financing going into agribusiness. We are also very happy that we contributed to the youths. At first, they were just talking about agribusiness, but now the youths are proudly practicing agribusiness. Then we are also very happy that Parliament has prioritized agriculture, and the President, even now and then, has special programs just talking about agribusiness. You can't be more successful than that. So what challenges have we had in this work? Of course, there are two challenges in agribusiness or promoting agribusiness. The first one is the environment, like the rain, the sunshine and all that. Unfortunately, this is a challenge nobody can do anything about. But so what does UAA do? We partner with those partners whose job it is to keep talking about the environment, partners like Umoja who are in tree planting. Because when, for example, there is too much sunshine like there was last week, and you tell people plant trees, they ask when will they grow. That tree which you are sitting under, who planted it? And did he ask when it will grow? So the environment is a big challenge, which is everybody's problem. But two, the changing consumer habits. For the changing consumer habits, because of the consumer eating habits, Uganda Agribusiness Alliance work can never be done and you finish. You have to be at it all the time. How do you do it? You do it by making sure that Uganda, being an agriculture country, looks at agribusiness as a value chain, which is linked from one link to the other to the other. If, for example, you look at that chart and you see where the farmer is at the top and the consumer is at the bottom, on the sides, on both sides, you have got those, either the people who provide the information or the equipment or the money. And then you also have all those people who are part of the chain who, for example, make sure that if, let's say, we talk about matoke, if you're in Kabohe, you need that farmer who has actually made up his mind to grow the banana plantation in Kabohe. That person has got to make sure that if he promised to harvest his bananas on Monday for delivery to Kampala on Tuesday, that the people who harvest are there. Now, if for some reason maybe he didn't pay, and then the people who cut the matoke for him do not turn up, that means the lorry will come to Kabohe and there will be no matoke. And then he has to pay for that money. Then, because the matoke was not cut, the lorry became empty and the farmer has to pay because he did not load. The stall, the wholesaler in a Kasero market who buys his matoke will not get his supply. And God forbid, if that person is supposed to supply the vendors who make katogo for the border borders eat at 6:30. You can see how terrible that can be. So what we at Uganda Agribusiness Alliance are looking at in the future is for Uganda government, this is government, to make sure that when they look at the agriculture sector, and I'm talking about the farming and farm-related activities which are commercial, they do their part. For example, what part? Make sure that all our roads work. Because you can imagine, I've spent 2 years growing my matoke, I load them on a lorry, and the bridge is not there. And matoke is quite perishable. And once again, those people will not get their food. So, for the future, we would like to see a country which has accepted that we are an agribusiness country, we are interlinked, and every link delivers. Then, so what do I want the public to do? I just want to request everybody that we prevail upon the powers that are to make sure that every child goes to school. Why? Currently, we have got 9 million people who cannot read and write. And unfortunately for us in agribusiness, all of those are offloaded into our sector. Now, when the president stands up and says, you have got to do HVAL, Baba, president, how do you do HVAL when you cannot add? You cannot, I give you 3 chicken to sell, and somebody is saying, oh, maybe I'll give you 30,000 for each, and you had wanted 31,000. You cannot quickly say, oh, no, my profit is only 3,000 and whatever. So, education of everybody is paramount. That is one. Then 2, forget all this which is going on, the PDM, the whatever, and just organize Ugandans into groups. Don't force them into cooperatives, but get them to understand that for as long as you are part of a value chain, you are home and dry. Let's say if you are growing tomatoes. There's a young man, a relative of my friend. He makes boxes. So when I visited him and I looked at them, I asked, "What is this?" He said, "Ezotuzita ply." And I'm like, "What is it?" "Those are called ply." They're like, "What is ply?" "Oh, those are the special boxes for carrying tomatoes." Now, if you have got a young person in your place, and he's doing whatever he's doing, the minimum we expect you to do is introduce him to the value chain, because this ply man is a very important part of the value chain of tomatoes. So the person who sells them the agrochemicals, they have got to be the right chemicals. 2, this person who is selling the agrochemicals should know what they do, how they are supposed to be applied, and when we are supposed to stop applying them. Because what happens is, those illiterates who I told you, those who can't read and write, they go to buy this, how they pronounce it is up to them, and somehow the seller has no idea how it is applied. Because when you pretend and go to these shops and you ask, "You see, I told you I've got the aphids and I've got the fungi," that somebody will say, "Oh, it works on everything." We do not have those chemicals which kill everything. Otherwise, even the tomato would be dead. So, government, make sure that everybody is part of a value chain. Education, value chain. And finally, I would love to thank both my partners and those of UAA. As far as I'm concerned, my biggest partner, of course, is my God. But I thank my father, because I remember when I was in politics, he was my political manager. And you know, for you people in politics, you don't know what it is to have a manager who you trust 100%, if anything, 1,000%. Once my father was there, I was done. And actually, part of the reason I left politics, he was becoming a bit weak, and I'm like, no, I can't do this alone. So I thank my parents. Secondly, I want to thank the media houses, specifically UBC, because most of this information, many people have it, but nobody knows about it. Thirdly, I want to thank all those partners who have either technically partnered with us, meaning they have done the technical work, because at Uganda Agribusiness Alliance, our job is to understand and advocate. But our partners actually do the work, funded by other partners. Partners like Small Foundation, Oxfam, SNV, USAID, all of those who have funded us, we thank you. Finally, and most importantly, we thank the partners who do the real production. Like right now, we are working with Golden Pumpkin. These are the ones promoting the production of pumpkin. If anybody is looking for a new cash crop, which takes only 4 to 5 months to go to the market, try pumpkin. Talk to Golden Pumpkin, you'll be home and dry. We also want to thank the people of West Nile. This is a special thank you to you. For the longest time, onions eaten in West Nile were coming from Sebei, Kapchora, all the way to West Nile. But when we spoke to West Nile, because I told you our job is to look, see, and advocate, when we went to West Nile advocating for onion production, a number of West Nile farmers have joined onion production. They've just had their first harvest, and oh, am I proud of them. In conclusion, I want to call upon every Ugandan to utilize whatever talent God gave you. For me, God made me a farmer's daughter and also gave me a mouth to talk. For you, I don't know what your talent is. Find a way of developing it and enjoying it. Thank you and goodbye.
UBC, inspiring Uganda.
In Chegegwa district of southwestern Uganda, Rushayumbe Hill suffered extreme degradation when unanticipated population increase occasioned by refugee influx increased pressure on the environment.
First of all, I want to thank World Bank for funding IGAD countries. There are about 5 countries in Africa: Ethiopia, Djibouti, Kenya, and Uganda, who are hosting